Hey everyone, welcome back to the next edition of WST Bombers Report. My name is Connor Hrabchak. In a moment, I'm going to be joined by Zach Schnitzer, aka Schnitzy from Bonfire Sports Winnipeg. You watch him and Darren Bombing post game after every single Bombers game on the Bonfire Winnipeg YouTube channel. And together, we're going to be breaking down the Blue Bombers 28-27 1-point loss to the Calgary Stampeders on Saturday night. Schnitzy, how are you doing after that one? We got the hockey theme going on today. I got the Nordiques hoodie on. You've got the Chell Chit Chat hat going. Shout out Liz Hood, my WST Sunday Live co-host. How are you doing today? Breaking down a tough one in Calgary for the Blue and Gold.
Yes, shout out indeed to Liz Hood. I was wearing this on the Bonfire After Dark show last night. Got a lot of comments. Sweet looking hat, little green hockey stick. My wife wants to steal this hat, and it's not going to happen, Connor. It's mine. It's mine. Listen, this and shout out to Liz because she puts out great content with Chell Chit Chat and with you, of
100%.
course. But check out new episodes dropping for her show as we speak. This loss was tough. Anytime you lose by 1 point on a walk-off field goal when you have the lead on a CFL record-tying field goal with 61 seconds left and all your defense has to do is make a stop and they don't, it stings, man. Like, I won't lie. I had a hard time getting to sleep, and that's after processing the whole game and having my therapy session on Bonfire.
Right.
So it's tough, and yet we'll talk about this more as we go. This didn't feel to be emotionally like a 1-point loss. Just the way the second half went, the way that the offense struggled to move the ball and the defense struggled to stop Calgary. I just had this feeling of inevitability that the Bombers would find a way to lose this game.
Yeah, and we're going to break it all down. Like you said, lots of angles to take from this one. But I think where I want to start is, I think to me, this game was clearly a tale of two halves for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You get out to the 17-0 start. And yeah, going into halftime, that lead shortened for sure because Calgary got some big plays and some big touchdowns. But the first quarter, the Bombers came out flying. Brady Oliveira was touching the ball like seemingly every single snap. He ended the first half with 146 total scrimmage yards. I believe he only had 4 touches in the second half. Terrell Bonds goes down, and after Jamal Parker going out last week, that's now two of your starting corners being out against Vernon Adams. And I don't care how many wide receivers are hurt for Calgary at this very moment or going into this game, which again, Philpott played through some injuries as well. That's a tough mountain to climb. I know they were winning 17-0, but not having your starting corners on the road against VA, who might be playing like a top 3 quarterback in the CFL right now, is a very tall task for the defense. But it was really the offense for me where things kind of fell apart, and we're going to get into it. I know, Zach, you think, the blame kind of goes on both sides of the ball, and I agree with you. I think the bigger share of it goes to the offense and just not being able to move the ball in the second half. I don't know if Calgary adjusted and took away Brady Oliveira, but there was no big injury up front. Like Terrell Bonds, and then being down your starting 2 corners, that it doesn't give the defense a full pass, but you can point to that and say, okay, they didn't have their starting corners. On offense, it was really just, it was the Brady Oliveira show in the first half, and then they took him away in the second half, and the offense seemingly didn't really have an answer. How did you see this one playing out in Calgary from your eyes, Schnitzy?
Yeah, like you said, I definitely saw that each phase of the team took turns contributing to this 1-point loss.
Agreed.
But I would agree with you that the defense had a little bit of a mulligan there with the devastating injuries, right? Like you lose your 2 starting corners, that's tough. That is tough to overcome against, like you said, and which is well said, against VA, who is having a career year and has deep ball accuracy up the wazoo, if I can say that term, up the wazoo. I don't even know what that means. Anyway, Connor, it was the offense. Like the offense comes out to a 17-0 start. Brady Oliveira has 100 yards receiving in the first half, 46 yards rushing. And then in the second half, after Strevler turns the ball over on 3rd and 1 on the Calgary 6-yard line, right? We talk about how Collaros had an efficient game. He had a good completion percentage. For once, he didn't throw a pick. but they still turned it over in the red zone again. And against a good Calgary team on the road, came back to bite them. And then it kind of continued in the second half for the offense, where they were humming, like you said. But in the second half, they had no first downs in the third quarter. They had 22 yards. And then in the fourth quarter, they do get 5 first downs, but they end the half with 62 yards of offense. Sorry. And then they have to rely on a Castillo 63-yard CFL record-tying field goal to even get any points. And they just, like you said, Brady was completely shut down by Calgary. And I gotta say, like, we look at Jason Hogan again at this point. Last week he wore the goat horns for making that decision to throw the ball, right?
Did we talk about that at all? I don't remember.
First and 10, up 6, right? Ooh. And this time, Bob Slowick for Calgary is a good defensive coordinator, and they have arguably the best defense in the CFL. They came to play, they made adjustments, like you said, Connor. And what troubled me the most was that the offense wasn't able to make counter adjustments to get some yards. And I said this last night, if the Bombers offense was even average in the second half, they win this game. They don't need to kick a 63-yard field goal. They sustain that drive and they kill the clock, and they have their own walk-off field goal instead of leaving Vernon Adams with 61 valuable seconds in the end of the game. And I just think we'll talk about this more, but this has been a pattern for this offense. This isn't just a one shot here with a good Calgary defense. This has been a pattern, and it's very concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well said, and I definitely agree. Quickly, let's read through the stats. I've done this for every single game that we've covered on this WST Bombers report. Bombers lose by 1. The net yardage, Calgary outgained Winnipeg 408 to 303. First downs in Calgary's favor as well, 17 to 16. Big plays in Calgary's favor as well, 3 to 2. A few of those going for touchdowns for Calgary, big, long touchdown plays, and a few long catches that really flipped field position and ended up in touchdowns and things of that nature. And then the one turnover for the Bombers on downs in the red zone, the one that you mentioned there, Zach, just a killer. I mean, the offense was moving the ball. Chris Strevler's been money on third down. It's 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches, if you want to call it, maybe 1.5 yards. And they don't get it. And he gets stuffed, and he gets no push up front. The O-line gets no push, and that really kills the drive. But real quick, I want to bring up that screen grab I had again of Sergio Castillo hitting a 63-yard field goal. Like, we're going to get into a lot of the negatives because, of course, the Bombers lost, and there's blame to go around and things that they'll need to improve on. But man, this guy has been absolute money at the kicker position for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the last number of years. And to hit a 63-yarder, I know the wind was at his back. I don't care, frankly. No. With just over a minute left, I mean, that's incredible. He had the line. I mean, if you're watching it live, and we can't play the highlights due to copyright reasons, but if you're watching it live, you could see as soon as he kicked it, he had the line. It was straight on. He just needed the leg to get there, and he absolutely had the leg. So shout out Sergio Castillo. He's been on Winnipeg Sports Talk a few times over the years. Always a great guest on our show, and still an absolute money kicker that can be counted on for 60-plus yarders in the clutch. And yeah, we could talk about the offense failing, but Sergio does not fail them in the big moments, and I think that's worth mentioning. I do just want to say real quick, where are you at? I think we have differing opinions on this, Zach, because you and I were talking before we hit record in terms of, and we're going to get asked this as well in our Blue Crew review. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We got a lot this week. Where are you at in terms of the panic that comes from this game, or the glass half full versus glass half empty? I'll let you go first, because I think I know for a fact we're going to fall in different sides of the coin here when it comes to this one, but maybe make your argument for where your panic meter is at the Bombers. 4-4, 3 losses to Calgary, this one by a point on Saturday night.
I would say I'm not panicking, but my finger is hovering over the panic button, Connor. Okay. If I think about the state of this team right now, aside from the special teams, which have been a bright spot, their kick cover teams are tops of the CFL, particularly for kickoff return coverage. Sergio is just, massacring the ball, like 53-yarder, 49-yarder, 63-yarder, and then he had the 37-yarder, which he almost missed. It's funny, he has trouble with those shorter field goals, right? Jamison Sheehan last night had an incredible game. 47 yards net punting average is extremely good. So I think the special teams are good, although they did take a couple of bad penalties at the end of the game, Connor. But when I look at the defense, you could argue the defense played well, and they only allowed field goals in the second half. They only allowed about 22% for Calgary on second down success rate. So, did they do their job? Yeah, but they've got some injuries, right? Those corners are down, and now you've got Trey Vavel and Dexter Lawson Jr., who got beat on a 78-yard touchdown to Tevin Jones. And then you have Jake Kelly back there, who played safety when they had like a 6 DB set, and he looked like he really struggled. And then the D line just didn't get enough pressure on Vernon Adams. So if you're looking at that defense, especially now going up against a high octane Ottawa offense with receivers to spare, that's concerning. But I'll go back to the offense. This is where I'm just about to hit the panic button, because this wasn't just this game that the offense has struggled. You look at last game against Toronto, where they won 40-31, seems like a lot of points. That was a defensive touchdown and 2 special teams touchdowns. They had 1 touchdown drive against Toronto. The week before in Toronto, again, 1 touchdown drive. The offense just couldn't do anything, throwing picks. And then you even go back, Connor, to the Calgary game. The one here, they did have 2 touchdowns, but one was in garbage time. So when the chips were down, 1 touchdown drive. Go back to the Stampede Bowl on July 3rd, 1 touchdown drive when the game was actually, I think that was garbage time too. So this offense, since starting 3-0, has not been able to sustain success. They haven't been able to stay on the field. And they've just got more and more injured now, with Schoen out and Cody Case goes out. This offense is really struggling. Granted, they've had to switch up personnel on the offensive line, but against Calgary last night, it was your starting offensive line. Brady was cooking. Zach wasn't throwing picks, but they don't have receivers, Connor. I just don't, and this is crazy to say, and I'll finish with this point. They don't have the horses at the receiver position right now to compete. Nick Dembski is their only deep threat right now. Wheatfall has completely gone silent. Clercius dropped a ball yesterday. He didn't do much. Stearns had the touchdown, but he only had, 30-odd yards receiving. And Dylan Mitchell had 2 catches. I mean, when your running back is your leading receiver by about 70 yards, that's concerning for a Bombers offense that I think is really sputtering and stagnating. And I have very little confidence that they can get their act together.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I will say, Bombers leading receiver on Saturday night, Brady Oliveira, 9 catches, 100 yards, and a touch. Or no, he did not have a touchdown. Sorry,
He still doesn't have a touchdown. It's so surprising, eh?
I know. It just rolls off the tongue that he had a touchdown, but he didn't.
Oh, of course.
I know, but yeah, that's something that last year too, he went a long time without having a touchdown. So that's something we'll have to watch for going forward. Brady Oliveira.
Yeah.
I know they punch it in with Strevler. That's what they do on the goal line, but still interesting that Brady has not gone in the end zone yet. I will quickly say, when it comes to the Bombers right now and where I'm at on their season and 4-4, I will say, yes, the 1-point loss was crushing in a way. And yeah, we hit it off the top. You lose on a walk-off field goal. That's never going to feel good if you're a fan of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. If you're interested in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, you're never going to walk out of that game feeling good. However, I may have found a game where I actually felt decent walking out of a 1-point walk-off field goal loss. I mean, there's a lot to not like, and we've covered a lot of that, but Trey Vavel still looked good. The special teams you mentioned, I still think the defense without their starting corners shouldn't be given a total pass, but we saw the D-line and Willie Jefferson take over last week. I still think there's more that can be, there's another step there for the secondary, and I'm not using this as like a long-term, season-long indictment on the secondary that both of their starting corners were hurt. I will say that's been a position group that they have yet to figure out this year. Marquise Bridges was starting corner, had a great first game, is now cut from the team, and they've shuffled things around. And they didn't have a great performance by any means in that game. But I have a little bit more grace given that they were down their 2 starting corners against Vernon Adams on the road. D-line still made some plays. I thought Willie Jefferson was noticeable. He didn't completely go back to, dominating and then invisible. I thought he was there. He was making an impact. Offensively, I still see this offense as missing another horse. Like you said, I think Dalton Schoen, he's got to get healthy because the Bombers receiving core desperately needs a Dalton Schoen type. And Brady Oliveira is coming along, and the O-line looked better with Bryant. And Zach Collaros, I think, in the first half at least had a great game and fell off in the second half. But I think there's more reasons for optimism here. If you told me going into the game they were going to lose, I don't think I would have had this many reasons for optimism, let alone, they lost by 1. They were 5.5-point underdogs against a great team on the road. Vernon Adams coming back. I don't think this is the game for mass panic on Twitter after the loss. I think the second Calgary game when Claros got hurt, it was at home, Friday night, Princess Auto Stadium, big revenge game coming off the bye, and they get smoked by 20 points. I think that's the game to panic. I don't think the close road loss down 2 starting corners is the time to completely, fire every coordinator and every coach and completely panic. I think there are more reasons for optimism coming out of this game than I thought there would be. And I know maybe the large portion of Bomber fans don't want to hear that. They lost, they're 4-4. BC's right on their heels. This is a big game this week for the crossover. If the Bombers are going to be, 4th in the West, yes. Ottawa is 3rd in the East. So there are a lot of things to not like, but I actually find myself okay with the reasons for optimism. I'm taking a more glass half full approach coming out of this loss, which is tough to do given the walk-off 1-point loss, Zach.
Well, I appreciate that, Connor. And to your point, they had been beaten by 21 points on the previous 2 games against Calgary, and they only lose by 1, right? And like we said, the defense holds Calgary to field goals in the second half. The special teams were humming until the couple of bad penalties. They start out like gangbusters, and Collaros doesn't throw any picks. He's 21 of 26. There was, despite the lack of receivers. So, maybe honestly at this point, I'm like, where's Reggie White Jr.? Is he still available? Is Rashid Bailey, who was second in receiving for the Argos last year before he got cut for Mackay Polk, is he hanging around? Like they need some juice, and I just don't know that Dylan Mitchell is the answer there. But
how about Lucky Whitehead again?
Oh my God, no. You're going to give me a heart attack. No, Lucky Whitehead.
Well, his number's taken. Dylan Mitchell wearing 13 threw me off for a second. I was like, is that? No, it's not Lucky. No, it's Dylan Mitchell. Okay. Anyways. Yeah, I don't know. I could not agree more that the wide receiver room is a big issue for this team. Nick Dembski is absolutely balling. We had him on the program last week. 79 straight games with a catch now, and he's been effective in all of them. He's a player that is going to be bringing his game every single week. You know what he's going to bring. But the rest of the group, Clarcius 3 catches, Dembski only 3 as well, Stearns 3, Mitchell 3, Oliveira with 9, Wheatfall with 1. I just think, this group is missing another, or not another, maybe the guy. Like Nick Dembski has games where he's the guy, but if they can get another guy, Dalton Schoen, to be healthy, that just would open up so much more. And if the O-line can repeat what they did this past week and Brady Oliveira can keep rolling, I think there are brighter days ahead for this offense, despite how grim it has been through the first, 10 weeks now with Jason Hogan, rookie offensive coordinator, and the amount of picks and turnovers. I still think that there's obviously many more levels that this offense can reach, but I think sooner rather than later, you're going to see them hit those, even without Dalton Schoen. And then if they get Dalton Schoen back, I think you'll see a much improved offense that would turn the ball over less, have more explosive plays, maybe even more Brady Oliveira. Maybe it opens up the box a little bit more, having shown out there. So there brighter days ahead for the offense. That's my overarching hot take from this game, because they looked great for a half and then terrible for the second half. And I think there's going to be more of the first half that you saw going forward rather than the second half. Anyways, Zach, anything else on this game before we get to our buy or sell segment?
I think we've broken it down pretty well, Connor. I guess the other thing we didn't mention with the offense is Zach Collaros was sacked 4 times, and I saw a lot of people's reaction that our O-line was brutal last night. I actually thought the O-line was fine. They
at least 2 of these sacks. I totally agree with you. At least 2 of those sacks were Zach's fault. There was one 3-man rush, 0 pressure in the pocket, and he escapes left. And the D lineman Hutchings, who had, I believe, like 3 of those sacks, just steps out. The O-line has no clue because they're not looking behind at where Zach Collaros is scrambling. And he just steps to the side. And again, Zach is not going to be outrunning these super athletic D linemen to the edge. They sack him, and it's an easy sack, but he had no pressure. And it's maybe just an internal clock thing. He was just running. He was ready to go. But that was one where the O-line blocked it up great. He had time, and he just ran from a clean pocket.
Yeah,
and he held onto the ball too long a few times. Like I didn't see those as O-line sacks.
Yeah, I agree.
Where you were going with that.
No, that's totally where I was going, and I think that play in particular, I was surprised because it looked like he had time in the pocket. I'm not sure why he stepped up. Maybe he got nervous, but my take from just watching him, especially on those 4 sacks, Connor, is and we need to see the coaches, all 24 video from the game to really know. But what I gathered was that some of those were coverage sacks where I don't think Zach was comfortable pulling the trigger. I don't know that there was anybody open, right? And if you take away Dembski, are those other guys going to really get open? I don't know. Or is that Hogan's scheme? Like there wasn't a short passing game to speak of in the second half. They really struggled on first down, but those sacks were, those sacks almost killed them. They're lucky. Let's just say this, that Sergio Castillo could hit a 63-yard field goal, right? When's the last time you saw a team get sacked for a huge loss and still kick that field goal from past midfield? So I just think, I just don't think the receivers are open, and we don't have the horses there right now. But hey, I like your thinking, Connor. Can they get it together? I sure hope so. Like
I'm not by any means saying that, Labor Day Banjo Bowl, watch out, Bombers are sweeping, but I still think that you're seeing more glimpses of an improved team, or a team that's on the upswing, rather than the first couple of weeks where everything was disjointed. They were turning the ball over a ton. They only had the 1 turnover in this game, and it was a 3rd down sneak. Which again, Chris Streveler historically has been absolute money on those. And I'm not worried about him in that scenario going forward. So I do think there are brighter days ahead, both for the offense and the defense, if these corners can get healthy. If not, that is a big question mark, for sure. I mean, maybe the biggest question mark going forward, on that defense would be the secondary. And it continues to be, because it has struggled through the first 10 weeks. It is time for our first segment of the show, Buy or Sell. This is the part of the show where I pepper Schnitzy with questions, statements, anything about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and he lets me know if he's buying or selling what I'm telling him. We encourage you to play along in the comments down below. Let me know if you're buying or selling what I'm telling Schnitzy. And the first statement I have for you, Zach, is that we talked about the lack of wide receiver depth. Is it Kyle Walter's fault that the Blue Bombers are this thin at wide receiver? Are you buying or selling that?
I don't know if it's just his fault, but I am buying Connor. Dylan Mitchell was the big offseason acquisition. They gave him a healthy signing bonus, a good salary for a receiver, and he couldn't make the team or couldn't make the starting roster, I should say, over a guy like Joey Corcoran, who was a 5th rounder. And then he came in last night, and he was pretty much a non-factor. So you've got Dylan Mitchell, you've got Schoen. Now they took a gamble on Schoen. I think they consciously chose Schoen over Lawler. They saw that both of them had injury histories. but they looked at Schoen's production and his age, and they said, we're going to roll the dice with Schoen. Well, obviously hindsight is 2020, which is such a cliche thing to say, but it's true.
It's true.
And that looks like a bad decision because Lawler is absolutely lighting it up in Hamilton. He was on pace to be maybe the MOP at one point. His production has gone down a little bit, but that's probably because other teams are keying on him, and you see guys like Keandre Smith taking the reins in the receiving corps for Hamilton. But I wonder, why couldn't they have kept Kenny Lawler and Dalton Schoen? I know Lawler was asking for a lot of money, but this is a team, Connor, that didn't spend to the cap. They had money left over. Now, are they leaving that money for a guy like Ontario Wilson or other NFL cuts or other players at the trade deadline? Historically, there's no real movement in the CFL at the trade deadline. I don't know why they didn't go all in and back up the Brinks truck, spend right to the cap to get a guy like Kenny Lawler and Dalton Schoen. And it doesn't look like they were really, and this isn't necessarily Kyle Walters, maybe it's more the scouting. I mean, maybe there was nobody good out there, but they didn't find the next Ontario Wilson. They didn't find the next Dalton Schoen. They stuck with Carrick Wheatfall. They stuck with Kevin Sklercius. And those guys, although they've had spots of excellence, haven't been that great. So I would buy that.
Okay. I like that. I like that pick. The next buy or sell is it Cam Allen time? So Cam Allen, safety, was the star of the preseason. I know Josh Frey-Sam from the Winnipeg Free Press was on Winnipeg Sports Talk and, was asked about Cam Allen, raved about Cam Allen, how he was playing in practice in the preseason, all of those things. Jake Kelly was in at safety in this past game. They moved Reddick Cramdy around. He played a little bit of safety. He was playing a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of DB. There were so many injuries. It was hard to keep up with what was happening in the secondary. Is it Cam Allen time at safety to bring maybe a different look to the back end, Schnitzy?
I think it is. I know another guest on Winnipeg Sports Talk, Derek Taylor, the voice of the Bombers, called him his rookie of the year for the Bombers. He hasn't got into the lineup. I think it is. I'm not exactly sure why Jake Kelly is playing. No knock on Jake Kelly. He seemed to struggle. He's a Canadian. They have ratio flexibility, albeit not as much as last year. Jake Kelly doesn't need to be in there. They can go American at that position, especially if they're playing like, six DBs. Mm-hmm. So I do think you got to give Cam Allen a look right now, because this secondary, in addition to this receiving core, as we've talked about, Connor, is really the weakness of this team right now. And I don't see the downside in giving Cam Allen a shot.
Okay. I like that. I also don't see the downside. I mean, we're getting to a point where there are so many injuries in the back end where everyone's getting a run. Like when Trey Vavel is getting looks at corner and he's kick returning and all of those things. It's getting down to, I mean, healthy bodies are getting out there at corner right now, and they're trying to tread water through all of these injuries. Let's put it that way. So that was buy or sell. Let us know in the comments down below if you're buying or selling what I was telling Zach. And we're going to slide right into our very next segment, which is the Blue Crew Review. This is the segment where we take questions from you, the fans, and there have been a lot of them. There are more after losses than there are wins. People want to know more after these tight losses. Well, this one was tight. The other ones that we've covered haven't been. But here are some of the Blue Crew Review questions. Thank you everyone who submitted them on Twitter. Stay glued to my Twitter at Hrabchak1. I tweet after every single game. Time for the Blue Crew Review. People fire their comments in there, and you've come up with some great ones. So let's get right into it. Zach, I'll ask you the first one. How is it that after firing Jason Hogan, under the primary rationale of him being tight with Brady Oliveira, Brady's usage has gone down?
I think that's an excellent question, and it's mysterious to me, Connor. You've seen times at the when the Bombers are in the red zone, they go away from Brady. You remember that they were on the 7-yard line when Calgary came to town. And Chris Trevler throws on first down and throws a pick to Adrian Green, and that completely changed the game. You had last game where Brady Oliveira was cooking in the first half, and they only gave him 5 touches in the second half. I think he had 22 yards. when you need to bleed the clock and kick your own walk-off field goal, you'd think you'd go back to Brady. Now, last week the excuse was that Toronto stacked the box. I didn't necessarily see Calgary stacking the box. They're more of a defense that really covers the field really well, and it's hard to find holes in the defense. Why you wouldn't get Brady Oliveira going is baffling to me. I don't have a great answer for that. I don't know if if Hogan is outsmarting himself and trying to get too cute. I really don't know. But of all the OC candidates the Bombers were looking at, I thought he would be the last person to go away from Brady, especially when Brady was cooking.
Yeah.
Right? I don't understand it. I think it's something that, you said you were optimistic, Connor. If they can get more consistency in terms of play calling and just keep it simple, right? Like, I'm a husband. The KISS principle, man. Keep it simple, stupid. Like, sometimes I think these coaches outsmart themselves, and he's an inexperienced play caller. So maybe Jarius Jackson needs to sit him down and say, listen, man, like, keep running Brady Oliveira. He's the reigning MOP in the CFL. I don't quite understand. And go ahead.
No, this is something that we've talked about on almost every single WST Bombers Report episode that we've done at this point, is Jason Hogan's play calling. It's such a lightning rod of a topic this season, especially when, multiple games in a row, they would have these red zone turnovers on first down in prime spots to run the ball, and they didn't. I did like in this game, they got into the red zone in the first quarter on their touchdown drive and ran the ball on first down from the 13 with Brady Oliveira, punched that one in with Chris Strevler, which made it a 10-0 game. The run game was working. They kept going to it. Even on second and short, they ran it with Brady and he got it down to the 2, and then Strevler punched it in. So, especially so, we talked about it when Chris Strevler was the starter, especially with that deep pass, which we don't need to rehash with under 3 minutes left in that Toronto game. But with Zach Collaros maybe showing signs of slowing down or struggling in and out of the lineup this year and throwing a lot of picks, now more than ever is the time to lean on Brady Oliveira. They did it in the first half, and it wasn't just the run game either. It was also the short passing game and, funny enough, the deep passing game, but that's not Brady Oliveira's game. That's not going to happen every single week. It was a nice throw, very nice play. But I do like Brady Oliveira in the short passing game, screen passes, dump offs, let him get 5 or 6 yards after the catch and stay ahead of the chains. That's something that, it doesn't have to be a run. It can be a very short pass. Where the Bombers seem to get into trouble is when they're doing these deep dropbacks on 1st and 10. They're getting sacked, which happened 4 times this game. It's getting knocked down. It's incompletion. It's a turnover. That's when they're getting into trouble. And I think staying ahead of the sticks more going forward is something that we're watching for. We said we were watching for, whether it's in the red zone or not. We're going to be monitoring Jason Hogan's play calling going forward. Absolutely.
Yeah. And just one more thing on that, Connor, if I may.
Yeah.
I know we want to get to the next question, but if you look at the Pro Football Focus CFL database, which they now have opened up to subscribers, it's interesting to look at the interior of that offensive line for the Bombers. An interesting point is, like, you look at a guy like left guard Gabe Wallace. He has the best pass blocking grade among guards in the CFL. Okay, but between Kolinkowski, Wallace, and Patrick Neufeld, none of them has above a 65 run blocking grade. And in fact, Gabe Wallace and Kolinkowski are in the 50s. So that may be a reason why they're struggling to run the ball and they're going away from it. But at some point, you just have to tap those guys on the shoulder like they did last year. Like, Brady was the MOP last year. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Like, you need to fire up these interior alignment and start to move bodies.
Yeah.
And they have a perfect chance to do that against an Ottawa defense that's fairly average.
Yeah, and we talked about that as a key going into this game against Calgary. They did it in the first half. Brady had an incredible first half. We'll see how much they run the ball. And we got a ton more questions about Jason Hogan in the Blue Crew review, but we're going to leave it at that one. And we'll continue to monitor the play calling and Brady Oliveira's usage going forward. I'm sure this will not be the last time we mention Jason Hogan on this program. The last question we're going to get to, Zach, is a question from Elliot, who submitted a question for every Blue Crew review.
Elliot,
Shout out
he's
Elliot.
on fire.
He's on fire. He's locked in. He says, what do you and Zach, me and you, think the Bombers need to do going forward? Because it's either the offense or the defense is atrocious. Almost never at the same time are they clicking. How do they get them to be in sync, playing well, both at the same time? So this is, a complimentary football question here from Elliot that has became the standard in Winnipeg and has now become rare through the first 10 weeks here.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really great question from Elliot. And you could, if you look at the Bombers' 8 games thus far, Connor, you could maybe look at week 2's win over BC, 34-20, where Strebler was the starting quarterback. And then I believe it was week 4. Yeah, week 4's 36-23 victory over the Elks, where maybe those were the only games where the offense, defense, and special teams were in sync. Other than that, it's been, games like last week versus Toronto, where the defense was okay, but then it had, Willie Jefferson with his all-world 4 knockdowns and a defensive touchdown from Jay Person off of Willie Jefferson strip sack. And then you had the 2 Vavel touchdowns on special teams. The offense didn't do enough to help, right? So even when the defense has come to play in the special teams, the offense doesn't move the chains, and they didn't last night either in Calgary. So I just think it's a sign of a struggling, sort of middling team, which when you're 500, you're a middling team where you can't get all phases of the team working in sync. And teams that can, like Calgary did last night, they're going to win more often than not.
Yeah, absolutely. You're on the money there. And it's something that, we've talked about Hogan's play calling, Brady's usage, the wide receiver and DB situation in terms of how thin they are at those positions. Certain things are starting to come along as well, because through the first 5 weeks, we talked about Trey Vavel as being a concern, and is Peyton Logan taking over? Well, Vavel seems to have taken the kick returning, punt returning job and absolutely, has turned a corner 180, absolutely, because he had the 2 touchdown game. And then this game against Calgary, flipped field position a few times. There was one block in the back that the Bombers challenged that was a little dicey, where he flipped field position on that one too. And that was in the 4th quarter. So Valve's coming along, the blocking is coming along. Mike Miller and the special teams staff they're getting the special teams going. Maybe you'll see Schoen come back and the offense gets going. I think health has a big thing to do with it, but also, getting all 3 of these things clicking at once is definitely top of mind for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That was Blue Crew Review. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. We really, really appreciate it. And like I said, stay glued to my Twitter at Connor Hrabchak1. I'll put out the tweet after every single Bomber game asking for questions, and we will get to as many as we can here on the WST Bombers Report. And before we get out of here, we're going to lightly preview next week's game. The Bombers return home to Princess Auto Stadium, looking to make it, the fans will look to make it a 10th straight sellout. This one's Thursday night. The 4-4 Blue Bombers host the 3-6 Ottawa Redblacks. Passing yards per game, Ottawa has the lead on that. Rushing yards per game, Winnipeg has the slight edge. Points for per game, again, Winnipeg with the slight edge. And then points against, very similar. Both teams right around 28 points against per game. What are you expecting this week, Thursday night, as the Bombers host the Redblacks, Zach?
I think, Connor, despite the injuries and the lack of production from the receivers, I do think this is a game that's a more favorable matchup for the Bombers than the Stamps. Ottawa's average on defense. They've allowed the most 30-yard pass plays in the CFL. Winnipeg needs to get it going. They need to get the deep passing game going. They need to get, 2 or 3 of them. Get Brady going. Zach should have time in the pocket. Ottawa has just generated the second least amount of sacks in the CFL. So if the offense is going to get rolling here, this is a good time, especially behind a supportive fan base in Princess Auto.
Yes.
And now defense, it's interesting coming into week 10, Ottawa was last in points, passing TDs and 30-yard passes and big plays, right? But then they put up 2 straight wins in which Brown has thrown for 600 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 1 interception. In particular, this last game against Toronto, where he had the almost walk-off touchdown there at the end. He was 26 to 31 for 84%, 373 yards and 5 touchdowns. We've talked a lot about how the Bombers secondary is banged up. Winnipeg's D-line, Connor, and Ottawa's allowed the 3rd most sacks in the CFL. Winnipeg's D-line is going to have to help out that vulnerable secondary and come to play and pressure Drew Brown. Otherwise, it's possible that he slices and dices this defense to the tune of, 30, 35, 40 points. The last thing I'll say, Connor, is the Bombers are 66-12 when leading after the first quarter. Now, they didn't get it done last night, even though they were leading. But they need to we've talked about this, they need to get Brady going early and often, get those hogs in the middle, get the chip under their shoulder or something, or maybe give them some kind of incentive. Like if you guys get Brady 100 yards, you all get a steak dinner at the Keg for a week. I don't know, but find ways to get Brady the ball, get him going. And when Ottawa's defense inevitably makes adjustments, anticipate those adjustments so that you have an answer. Hogan didn't have an answer in the second half against Calgary. They need to have an answer against Ottawa if they're going to walk out with a win, because if they lose that one at home, then I think a lot of people are going to be firmly pressing the panic button, Connor.
Yes. And we'll be breaking it down next Monday, as always, on the WST Bombers Report. The Week 11 in the CFL is Bombers Redblacks on Thursday. The Elks hosting the Argonauts on Friday night, and then the Saturday doubleheader, Saskatchewan hosting Hamilton. That should be a fantastic game. Hamilton coming off an OT loss, but still 2 of the best teams in the CFL. Saskatchewan coming off a bye there as well. And then BC hosts Montreal in the night game on Saturday. Should be another incredible game. And then for the Bombers, they host the Redblacks. Then they're on the road against the Alouettes, and then we're into the Labor Day Banjo Bowl home and home against the current West Division leading Saskatchewan Roughriders. So we're going to have all those games covered right here on the WST Bombers Report. Thank you everyone for watching this episode as we broke down the Bombers 28-27 narrow loss to the Calgary Stampeders. We'll see you next Monday breaking down Bombers and Redblacks. Enjoy the game on Thursday night. If you can make it out to Princess Auto Stadium, hopefully make it 10 straight sellouts. That would be fantastic. And we'll be back Monday, Zach and I, breaking it all down right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks for watching, everyone.